He lost everything: his family, his purpose, his will to live. Ethan Colter thought solitude would numb his pain until one moonlit night in Desert Springs, a wild Mustang named Dakota appeared at his doorstep. Drawn by forces he couldn't understand, Ethan followed the horse to an abandoned asylum in the Nevada wilderness. What he uncovered there wasn't just shocking, it would challenge him to confront unimaginable darkness and rediscover a purpose powerful enough to heal not only his own scars, but those of countless innocent lives. The late afternoon sun blazed mercilessly over Desert Springs, Nevada, casting long, shimmering shadows across the red earth. The heat lay thick and oppressive, baking the small desert town and its scattered structures into silence. Ethan Colter stood on the porch of his worn-down cabin, squinting at the empty horizon as waves of heat blurred the distant mountains. He was a man in his early 40s, tall and lean from months of labor and solitude, his frame once muscular, now slightly thinned from neglect. Ethan had dark brown hair speckled generously with gray at the temples, framing a rugged face lined deeply with loss and isolation. His eyes, a stormy gray, carried the haunted expression of someone who had looked into the abyss and found only emptiness staring back. The cabin, a relic from another era, leaned slightly to one side beneath years of sun and wind erosion. Ethan had arrived here 6 months ago, fleeing memories from San Francisco, where his wife, Rachel, and their young son, Daniel, had been tragically taken from him in a brutal car accident. Since that night, he sought escape in this forgotten piece of land, miles from civilization, hoping the vast emptiness could somehow erase the profound void within his heart. Ethan spent his days growing meager vegetables in the tough desert soil, hunting small game when necessary, and avoiding the locals whose curiosity he neither needed nor wanted. As the daylight waned, Ethan descended the rickety porch steps, the boards creaking under his boots, and approached a battered mailbox rusted from neglect. Inside was nothing but sand, blown in by relentless desert winds. No letters, no postcards, just emptiness. A fitting metaphor, he thought bitterly. Returning to the cabin, he stirred the embers in the fireplace, its stone hearth cracked and worn, and began preparing a modest dinner of beans and dried venison. He ate alone, as always, the only sounds being the whistle of the evening wind and the distant calls of coyotes. Nightfall brought relief from the scorching heat, replacing it with a chill that crept through cracks in the cabin walls. Ethan sat wrapped in an old woolen blanket, staring into the dying embers. Sleep rarely came easily. When it did, nightmares awaited him, vivid images of twisted metal and shattered glass. So he lingered by the fire, allowing his mind to drift aimlessly. It was during these quiet hours that he heard a soft but unmistakable noise outside. Ethan sat up, immediately alert, his pulse quickening slightly. Desert animals were common, but this sound was different, heavier, more deliberate. He rose cautiously and opened the door a crack, peering into the moonlit darkness. Standing mere feet from his porch, bathed in pale moonlight, was a magnificent Mustang stallion. Ethan had seen wild Mustangs around Desert Springs, but none like this. The horse was large and muscular, its glossy black coat shimmering faintly under the moonlight, mane cascading down a proud, elegant neck. The animal stood calm, eyes fixed directly upon Ethan, intelligent, curious, yet strangely peaceful. For several long moments, Ethan held his breath, transfixed. Then slowly, almost involuntarily, he stepped onto the porch. The stallion neither moved nor flinched, only regarding him with calm interest. Ethan cautiously approached the animal, hands open to show no harm. The Mustang tilted its head slightly, acknowledging Ethan's gesture. "What brings you here, friend?" Ethan whispered hoarsely, unsure why he was speaking aloud to an animal. As if in response, the horse turned, took a few deliberate steps away, then glanced back. Ethan hesitated, intrigued and wary. Something in the Mustang's gaze compelled him forward, stirred something long buried deep within. Grabbing a flashlight from the porch railing, he followed. Dakota, he named the horse spontaneously, the name simply surfacing in his mind, led Ethan into the desert night. The cool air chilled his skin, the silence broken only by the rhythmic crunch of sand beneath boots and hooves. They moved steadily, Ethan trusting the animal instinctively, though he couldn't fully explain why. After nearly an hour's walk, Ethan spotted the outlines of buildings emerging against the stars. They approached closer, revealing a decaying structure he recognized vaguely from local rumors, a place called Asylum Ridge, a former mental institution long abandoned after a scandal decades prior. The building loomed like a dark specter, its windows shattered, walls covered in layers of graffiti and desert grime. Ethan shivered, not only from the cool air, but also from a sudden, inexplicable dread. Dakota halted abruptly at the edge of the dilapidated property, ears twitching nervously. Ethan gently patted his flank, grateful yet confused by the horse's guidance. "What is it you want me to see?" he muttered, more to himself than to Dakota. The Mustang snorted quietly and took a cautious step forward, nudging Ethan gently with his powerful shoulder. Accepting the silent encouragement, Ethan moved closer to the building. He circled slowly, flashlight illuminating broken glass, rusted equipment, and dried weeds growing unchecked through cracks in the concrete. The eeriness intensified as he noticed recent signs of human activity, empty cigarette butts and a worn path leading toward a partially concealed side entrance. Unease prickled Ethan's spine. Someone had been here recently, and whatever their purpose, it didn't seem wholesome. Dakota watched silently as Ethan stepped cautiously toward the partially open doorway. He shone his flashlight inside, revealing a grimy hallway stretching ominously into darkness. Old wallpaper peeled in long strips, ceiling tiles sagged precariously, and a foul odor lingered, mingling mold with something metallic. Ethan took a step inside, heart hammering. He sensed danger, secrets waiting to be uncovered, but now was not yet the time to delve deeper. He retreated, stepping back into the night air. Outside, Dakota remained calmly in place, ears pricked forward, attentive yet serene. Ethan stroked the horse's velvet muzzle, feeling comforted by the animal's presence. "We'll return," he murmured, surprising himself with determination. "We'll find out what's going on here." Dakota bobbed his head slightly, almost nodding in agreement. Ethan smiled faintly, a rare sensation of connection breaking through months of loneliness. Turning back, man and Mustang retraced their steps home, moving silently under a starlit sky. Ethan felt oddly invigorated, purpose rekindled from the dying ashes of his past. When they reached the cabin, Ethan lingered outside, reluctant to part from Dakota's comforting presence. The Mustang grazed quietly, accepting Ethan's occasional touch without fear. Finally, exhaustion took hold. Ethan retreated inside, laying down with a newfound sense of peace. Sleep found him quickly, this time mercifully free of nightmares. In his dreams, instead of twisted wreckage, Ethan saw open deserts, clear scotias, and the noble silhouette of Dakota galloping ahead, guiding him towards redemption. When dawn broke across Desert Springs, Ethan woke feeling something he hadn't experienced since the accident: hope.
Night after night, Ethan found himself trapped within relentless nightmares. Each dream began gently, deceptively sweet. Rachel's radiant smile, Daniel's infectious laughter, but always ended in twisted metal, the deafening sound of crunching steel, and an emptiness so profound it shattered his very bones. He would wake in a sweat-soaked panic, heart pounding wildly, breathing ragged, haunted by ghosts that refused to leave him alone. Driven by these restless nights, Ethan knew he needed answers. The image of Asylum Ridge lingered persistently in his mind, the dark building echoing a secret he felt compelled to uncover. Early morning found Ethan pacing restlessly on his porch, coffee steaming from a battered mug, Dakota quietly grazing nearby. The Mustang's calm presence had become reassuring. Ethan was preparing to return to Asylum Ridge when the distant rumble of a car engine interrupted the silence. Squinting into the harsh morning sunlight, he spotted a dusty blue sedan approaching the cabin. As it drew nearer, he could see the driver, a young woman whose eyes darted around curiously, taking in her surroundings. The car stopped several yards away, and the woman emerged with a confident yet cautious demeanor. Ethan observed her closely as she approached. She was in her late 20s, petite but fit, with shoulder-length auburn hair framing a face both intelligent and determined. She wore practical jeans and a crisp white blouse beneath a lightweight denim jacket, dusty from travel, and sturdy hiking boots that suggested she wasn't afraid to venture in a harsh terrain. "Ethan Colter," she called out as she approached, extending a hand. "I'm Marissa Hayes, a reporter with the Nevada Tribune." Ethan hesitated but shook her hand firmly, noting the faintly skeptical yet hopeful gleam in her dark brown eyes. "What brings you all the way out here, Miss Hayes?" he asked cautiously. Marissa smiled, a small, professional expression tinged with sincerity. "I'm investigating the disappearances of several children in Desert Springs. People say you're fairly new around here, but perhaps you've heard something useful?" Ethan shook his head slowly, his expression tightening. "I keep to myself. Haven't seen much beyond my own land." Marissa nodded understandingly, but held his gaze firmly, gauging his honesty. "All right, Mr. Colter," she said politely, handing him a small card. "If anything comes to mind, please let me know." As she walked away, Ethan felt an odd stirring of obligation, something beyond his own grief, a small but persistent urge to do something meaningful again. That afternoon, he packed supplies, determined to return to Asylum Ridge before sunset. Dakota trotted alongside Ethan willingly, guiding him effortlessly back to the abandoned asylum as though knowing its significance. This time, Ethan approached carefully, noting fresh tire tracks in the soft sand and a chain recently cut from the rusty gate, a clear sign of recent, unauthorized visitors. Inside, he walked carefully through shadowy corridors littered with broken furniture, graffiti-covered walls, and rusted medical equipment. His flashlight beam danced across peeling paint and forgotten memories, the air heavy with mold and neglect. Ethan found a staircase leading to the basement, where the smell grew stronger, mingling decay with something metallic and disturbing. At the bottom, he found a heavy steel door, partially ajar, revealing a chamber cluttered with evidence of recent human activity, an old mattress, cans of food, cigarette butts, and something more chilling, a child's small sneaker, dirt-stained and scuffed. Ethan shivered involuntarily, dread pooling deep within him. Gathering his courage, he quickly snapped photographs of the scene on his phone, determined to document everything before retreating into the fading daylight. Outside, Dakota stood vigilantly waiting, snorting gently at Ethan's tense approach. As they walked back, Ethan's mind spun with dark possibilities, fear tightening around his throat like a noose. Meanwhile, back at the modest Desert Springs motel, Marissa Hayes sorted through scattered notes and photographs across the cramped desk of her rented room. She had traveled from Reno, following leads on the missing children, compelled by a powerful personal mission. A decade earlier, her younger sister vanished, never found, an unresolved trauma fueling Marissa's unyielding pursuit of justice. Her eyes fell upon a blurry photograph from the town archives, capturing Asylum Ridge in its prime, once a bustling facility, now a decrepit ruin. Something about the old asylum nagged at her intuition, pulling at her investigative instincts. Frustration pushed her to slam her notebook shut. Rising, she paced restlessly, then grabbed her car keys, deciding she would visit the sheriff's office to press further on the local disappearances. At the sheriff's modest building, Marissa met Sheriff Carl Dawson, a stout man in his late 50s with thinning gray hair, kind but weary blue eyes, and a demeanor cautious yet empathetic. Carl had served Desert Springs for 20 years, loved by locals yet burdened by the unresolved disappearances. His reluctance to speak openly frustrated Marissa. "Listen, Miss Hayes," Carl said gently, adjusting his badge. "We followed every lead. I've been through that asylum multiple times myself. It's just empty ruins." Marissa raised an eyebrow skeptically, determined to keep digging. "Perhaps, Sheriff, but sometimes fresh eyes see things differently," she responded politely, leaving her contact information, hopeful yet frustrated by the lack of cooperation. That evening, Ethan sat silently on his porch, Dakota standing close by. Shadows grew long, and with them returned familiar dread. Yet tonight, Ethan's nightmares took a different shape. Not the crash, but instead flashes of dark corridors, frightened children's eyes, and the sound of small, helpless voices crying in the darkness. Awakening, Ethan's resolve hardened. He couldn't ignore these dreams, nor could he dismiss the disturbing things he'd found at Asylum Ridge. Marissa, back at her motel, found herself restless as well, her mind relentlessly combing over sparse clues. Unable to sleep, she revisited her notes, her heart aching with memories of her lost sister, deepening her resolve never to abandon this case. Unbeknownst to both Ethan and Marissa, their paths had already begun to intertwine, fate preparing them to confront a hidden darkness in Desert Springs. As dawn broke once more, Ethan made a silent promise to himself, and perhaps unknowingly, to Marissa as well, that he wouldn't rest until the secret of Asylum Ridge was brought into the harsh light of day. In the pale dawn light, Ethan returned to Asylum Ridge, Dakota silently trailing at his side, their footsteps muffled by the soft desert sand. The morning air was cool and carried a sharp, metallic scent, a scent that stirred unease in Ethan's chest. This time, Ethan carried more than just a flashlight. An old revolver, a relic from his father, rested snugly in the waistband of his jeans, the weight reassuring yet uncomfortable. Ethan never thought he'd need such protection, but after discovering that child's shoe, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into darkness he might not return from. Dakota snorted softly as they approached the asylum, his ears flicking nervously. Ethan gently patted the Mustang's powerful neck, drawing strength from the animal's steady presence. As he moved closer, he noticed more disturbances, footprints in the dust leading toward a collapsed stairway that he'd missed previously. The stairs descended into a half-hidden cellar door obscured by rubble and debris. Ethan's pulse quickened as he cleared the debris carefully, the steel door beneath rusty but intact. His hands trembled slightly as he pried it open, revealing a dark tunnel below. Heart pounding, Ethan descended into the dim passageway, flashlight illuminating mold-covered walls and cracked tiles. The deeper he ventured, the colder and damper it became, a pungent mix of mildew and decay filling his lungs. At the tunnel's end, Ethan reached another heavy door. This one was unlocked and swung open silently, revealing a room that froze him mid-step. Rows of rusted cages lined the walls, empty except for a scattering of dirty blankets, empty cans, and small, discarded clothes. The horror hit him sharply. Nausea surged within his stomach. Then, from the shadows, a soft whimper echoed. Ethan snapped toward the sound, flashlight trembling. In the corner cage, huddled and shivering, was a small boy. Ethan approached cautiously, speaking softly. "Hey there. It's all right. I'm not going to hurt you." The boy flinched, wide eyes staring blankly from beneath a mop of dirty blonde hair. His clothes were torn and filthy, his thin frame evidence of prolonged hunger. "My name's Ethan," he whispered soothingly. "Can you tell me your name?" The boy hesitated, then answered weakly, "Toby." Ethan knelt slowly, extending his hand. "Toby, let's get you out of here." The boy eyed him fearfully, but allowed Ethan to lift him gently, too weak to resist. Toby was lighter than Ethan expected, unsettlingly frail. As Ethan turned to leave, footsteps sounded faintly overhead, freezing him in place. Someone was approaching. Ethan moved quickly, carrying Toby out of the cage room and into the shadows beneath the stairwell, his heart hammering painfully. Above ground, Marissa Hayes stepped carefully through the ruins of Asylum Ridge, camera around her neck, eyes alert for anything suspicious. Determined to investigate independently, she'd chosen the early hours, hoping secrecy would yield answers. Her pulse quickened when she spotted Ethan's tracks clearly imprinted in the dust. Suspicion flared. Was Ethan Colter hiding something darker beneath his solitary exterior? Carefully following the prints, Marissa eventually discovered the same concealed cellar door Ethan had opened earlier. Her breath caught. This had to be it. Heart racing, she descended cautiously, camera ready. Ethan tensed beneath the stairs as Marissa's flashlight illuminated the eerie corridor. Sensing she wasn't one of the perpetrators, he made a swift decision, stepping out, shielding Toby protectively behind him. Marissa gasped, stepping back. "Mr. Colter? What are you?" Her eyes widened, seeing the trembling boy clinging desperately to Ethan. "Who is this?" "His name's Toby," Ethan replied calmly, urgency in his voice. "There's no time. We have to get him out safely. Can I trust you?" Marissa hesitated only briefly, eyes meeting Ethan's in mutual understanding. "Yes, of course." Together, they quickly climbed back up into the fresh air, Toby gripping Ethan tightly, fear subsiding slightly now they were above ground. Outside, Dakota stood patiently, sensing Ethan's tension. Ethan gently set Toby onto Dakota's broad back, holding him securely, and glanced toward Marissa. "You should photograph everything down there. People need to see what's happening." Marissa nodded, determination clear in her gaze. "Be careful," Ethan warned gently before guiding Dakota and Toby quickly toward his cabin. Alone now, Marissa hurriedly descended again, meticulously photographing cages, clothes, and filthy blankets, each image fueling her anger and determination. As she emerged, the morning sun fully illuminating the desolate ruin, her resolve solidified. She needed answers, and she knew exactly where to start. Back at Ethan's cabin, Toby sat quietly on Ethan's worn sofa, wrapped in a warm blanket, timidly nibbling crackers and sipping water. Ethan watched the boy sadly, heart heavy with concern. Toby's eyes remained fearful, haunted by horrors Ethan could barely fathom. Gently, Ethan tried questioning him, discovering that Toby was only 9, kidnapped months ago from a neighboring town, held captive in darkness alongside other missing children. Ethan's stomach turned with each revelation. "Did you see the others recently?" Ethan asked softly. Toby nodded hesitantly, whispering weakly. "They took them away. Big trucks came at night." Ethan comforted Toby gently, silently vowing he would not rest until justice was served. Meanwhile, Marissa drove urgently back to town, stopping first at a small diner to collect herself and review photographs. There she met Betty Jenkins, a waitress in her late 40s with graying curls framing a tired yet kindly face. Betty was known for her friendliness and perceptiveness, qualities born from years of serving and listening. Marissa showed Betty discreetly the most unsettling photos, hoping for insights. Betty's eyes widened in horror. "You need to show these to Sheriff Dawson," she urged fervently. Marissa thanked her and hurried onward, adrenaline coursing through her veins. At the sheriff's station, Carl Dawson reviewed the images gravely. He'd seen horrors in his career, yet these shocked him deeply. "Where exactly did you take these?" he demanded, concern lining his weary features. Marissa quickly relayed events, mentioning Ethan cautiously yet clearly establishing his innocence. Carl nodded slowly, accepting her account. "We need evidence strong enough for warrants. Keep your source, Ethan, quiet for now. I'll discreetly alert trusted deputies." Back at his cabin, Ethan gently tucked Toby into bed, watching him sleep restlessly. Exhaustion tugged at Ethan, yet sleep seemed impossible now. He stepped onto the porch, breathing the cool air deeply. Dakota approached quietly, resting his large head against Ethan's shoulder comfortingly. Ethan stroked the Mustang's neck gratefully, feeling a quiet strength flow between them. They were allies now, bound by a shared mission to protect innocence. Ethan knew the battle ahead would be dangerous, perhaps even deadly, But retreat was no longer an option. Somewhere within his broken heart, purpose blossomed anew, rooted not in vengeance, but in justice. He glanced toward the horizon, toward Asylum Ridge, now fully aware of its darkness. He vowed silently that the buried secrets would surface, no matter the cost. Ethan stood in his kitchen, staring blankly out the cracked window as morning sunlight spilled over the desert, painting the land in hues of amber and gold. His mind raced relentlessly through the night's discoveries: Toby's haunted eyes, the disturbing cage room beneath Asylum Ridge, and the silent promise he'd made to uncover the truth. Toby remained asleep in the small bedroom, curled tightly beneath worn quilts, finally finding respite in dreams untouched by terror. Outside, Dakota grazed calmly, sensing his friend's heavy thoughts. Ethan's contemplation was interrupted by the soft rumble of tires approaching the cabin. He turned swiftly, pulse quickening, relief washing over him when Marissa stepped out of her dusty sedan, camera bag slung securely over her shoulder. Her auburn hair gleamed in the morning sun, determination set clearly upon her delicate features. Ethan met her halfway, nodding silently in greeting. Marissa's eyes searched his briefly, reading the unease etched in the lines of his face. "I spoke to Sheriff Dawson," Marissa began, voice low yet firm. "He's on our side, but we need more proof, evidence linking specific individuals." Ethan glanced nervously toward the cabin door, thoughts drifting momentarily to Toby. "How do we even begin?" Marissa adjusted the strap on her camera bag, eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "I've been digging through old records. Asylum Ridge was officially closed in 1998 due to budget cuts, but certain funds continued to flow secretly into private accounts. One belonging to Jonathan Keller, former county supervisor, now a respected businessman. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Keller's name familiar to you?" Marissa pressed. Ethan shook his head slowly. "I've kept to myself since moving here. Don't know many locals." Marissa sighed. "He owns half of Desert Springs. Powerful, influential, practically untouchable." Ethan's jaw tightened. "No one's untouchable if we have solid proof." Marissa nodded solemnly. "Exactly, and that's why we're heading back tonight." As evening approached, Ethan made sure Toby was settled, entrusting his neighbor, Grace Miller, to watch the boy while he was gone. Grace was a soft-spoken woman in her mid-60s, slender and graceful despite her years, silver gray hair always neatly pulled back. Her eyes, gentle yet sharp, missed little and understood much, shaped by years of quiet observance. Grace agreed readily, her concern evident, reassuring Ethan that Toby would be safe. Ethan and Marissa parked her sedan discreetly near Asylum Ridge, just as dusk wrapped its violet cloak over Desert Springs. Dakota waited patiently at a safe distance, vigilant as ever. Quietly, the pair slipped into the shadows, tension mounting with each step closer to the forbidding structure. This time, Marissa led Ethan to an old administration office she had discovered earlier. Dusty file cabinets lined the walls, their contents partially ransacked, papers strewn carelessly about. Marissa methodically sorted through documents while Ethan stood watch, flashlight flickering nervously across cracked walls and faded photographs of stern-faced former doctors. Suddenly, Marissa gasped softly, eyes wide in shock. "Ethan, look at this." She handed him a photograph, slightly blurred but recognizable. A younger Jonathan Keller stood smiling broadly, shaking hands with Dr. Samuel Harrison, former director of Asylum Ridge. Another photo followed, Keller meeting with Sheriff Dawson's predecessor, Sheriff Frank Rollins, a stern man with steel-gray hair and cold eyes. Ethan's heart sank. "They're all involved," he muttered grimly. Marissa's camera clicked quietly, documenting every incriminating image and document. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine as the magnitude of corruption unfolded. Marissa pulled out more records, financial transactions marked discreetly as special transfers, lists of coded names, disturbing notes about children being processed, and scheduled transportations. Marissa clenched her jaw tightly. "This is proof enough." Keller, Rollins, others unnamed here, but surely recognizable once decoded. Ethan nodded slowly, determination hardening within him. They gathered everything into Marissa's bag, carefully arranging each document to ensure nothing was missed. Suddenly, headlights illuminated the windows, harsh beams slicing through cracks in boarded-up walls. Ethan tensed immediately, gripping Marissa's arm. "Someone's here," he whispered urgently. Voices echoed outside, angry and urgent. Ethan swiftly turned off the flashlight, pulling Marissa into a narrow side corridor. Footsteps grew louder, heavy boots crunching debris beneath them. Ethan pressed himself protectively against Marissa, breath held tight, adrenaline surging. Two men entered, flashlights sweeping the room. Men Ethan didn't recognize. The larger man, broad-shouldered with a cruel face and dark stubble, barked orders harshly. "Search thoroughly. Keller wants no loose ends." Ethan's blood ran cold at Keller's name. He glanced at Marissa, whose eyes mirrored his fear. They remained motionless as the men rummaged through the scattered papers, cursing angrily, realizing evidence was missing. "Someone's already been here," the second man snarled. "Damn it, call Keller." Panic flashed through Ethan's mind. They had to escape before reinforcements arrived. Carefully, Ethan and Marissa edged further back into shadows, reaching a small door leading outside. Ethan eased it open soundlessly, guiding Marissa out first. They ran silently into darkness, Dakota emerging quickly from shadows, sensing their urgency. "Go," Ethan whispered fiercely, lifting Marissa swiftly onto Dakota's broad back. The Mustang carried her effortlessly towards safety, Ethan sprinting alongside. They reached Marissa's sedan breathless and shaking, hearts pounding painfully. "We have to act fast," Marissa gasped, steadying herself. "They'll know soon we have evidence." Ethan nodded grimly. "Then we make sure authorities see it first." Late that night, in Sheriff Dawson's private office, Ethan and Marissa presented the damning photographs and financial records. Carl Dawson, visibly disturbed, exhaled slowly, eyes heavy with sorrow and anger. "Rollins mentored me years ago," Carl confessed bitterly. "Never imagined he'd be part of something like this. We have to act immediately," Marissa urged firmly. Carl nodded determinedly. "I'll issue discreet warrants first thing tomorrow. Meanwhile, stay hidden. These people have eyes everywhere." Ethan returned home before dawn, mind spinning. Grace greeted him softly, reassuring him Toby slept soundly. Ethan thanked her sincerely, relief evident. Alone again, Ethan checked on Toby, watching the boy's peaceful sleep, heart aching with compassion. Quietly, Ethan stepped outside, Dakota nudging gently against his shoulder. He leaned against his loyal friend, allowing silent tears of relief and frustration to flow unchecked. The fight was far from over, but darkness was finally being exposed to the harsh glare of truth. Ethan felt strength within himself, fragile yet growing steadily stronger. Together with Marissa and Carl, he'd ensure justice prevailed, no matter the risk, no matter the cost. The desert moon hung low, its silvery glow illuminating a landscape that seemed starkly alien under the pale light. Ethan and Marissa moved swiftly, hearts pounding, the shadows of the twisted desert flora stretching ominously around them. Clutched tightly to Marissa's chest was a small leather satchel containing precious evidence. Confidential financial documents, blurry photographs of prominent local figures shaking hands in sinister agreements, and most importantly, a small digital recorder with the haunting testimonies of frightened children, revealing horrors impossible to ignore. They had barely escaped Asylum Ridge, the echo of angry voices still ringing in their ears. Their pursuers were close behind, armed and relentless, desperate to reclaim the damaging proof Ethan and Marissa had seized. Ethan's breathing was ragged, adrenaline surging. He glanced at Marissa, noticing a thin trickle of blood staining her forehead, evidence of shallow cut from their narrow escape through the abandoned asylum's broken window. Marissa pressed onward, ignoring the pain, determination burning fiercely in her eyes. Suddenly, a sharp whistle pierced the silence, a harsh, commanding signal that their pursuers had found their trail. Ethan's pulse quickened. They sprinted forward, darting between clumps of sagebrush and towering saguaro, guided only by instinct and desperation. A flashlight beam sliced through the darkness behind them, briefly illuminating their path. Voices shouted orders. Footsteps echoed ominously closer. Panic gripped Ethan. They needed a miracle fast. Suddenly, as if answering his silent plea, a shadow emerged gracefully from behind a rock outcropping. Dakota stood tall, majestic even amidst danger, eyes reflecting moonlight in an otherworldly shimmer. The Mustang tossed his head impatiently, whinnying urgently to them. Ethan rushed forward, lifting Marissa gently onto Dakota's broad back, ignoring her weak protests. "Hold tight," Ethan urged softly. "He'll keep you safe." Marissa nodded silently, gripping the Mustang's dark mane tightly, eyes reflecting gratitude and trust. Ethan slapped Dakota's flank gently, urging him forward. "Go," he commanded. Dakota burst into motion instantly, powerful muscles rippling beneath glossy black fur, hooves pounding across the sand. Ethan ran alongside as long as he could, chest burning painfully, watching until Dakota and Marissa disappeared safely into darkness. Now alone, Ethan veered sharply to the left, deliberately leaving clear footprints, hoping to draw attention away from Marissa and Dakota. He sprinted toward a dry riverbed, twisting and weaving to confuse pursuit. Behind him, angry shouts grew louder. Ethan's foot caught suddenly on an unseen stone, sending him sprawling painfully. Scrambling upward, heart hammering, Ethan turned sharply, diving behind dense brush just as flashlight beams swept past. Voices argued loudly mere yards away. Ethan held his breath, praying they wouldn't notice his hiding spot. Seconds stretched painfully, each heartbeat echoing like thunder. Finally, frustrated curses filled the night, footsteps retreating grudgingly toward Asylum Ridge. Ethan exhaled shakily, adrenaline slowly subsiding, replaced by exhaustion and fear. Rising carefully, he crept forward, determined to reunite quickly with Marissa. Meanwhile, Dakota carried Marissa swiftly yet carefully towards safety, navigating effortlessly through moonlit dunes and rocky terrain. Marissa gripped tightly, amazed by the Mustang's intelligence and strength. Gradually, Dakota slowed, sensing danger had passed. He halted near Ethan's secluded cabin, nickering softly, reassuringly. Marissa dismounted gingerly, feeling dizziness from her wound. She leaned weakly against Dakota's sturdy frame, grateful for his comforting warmth and steady breathing. Moments later, Ethan appeared, breathing heavily, face pale from exertion. Relief flooded his expression, seeing Marissa safe beside Dakota. "Thank God," he murmured softly, gently examining her injury. "It's nothing serious," Marissa insisted bravely, forcing a smile despite obvious pain. Ethan led her carefully inside, seating her gently by the fireplace. As he tended her wound carefully, Marissa watched Ethan thoughtfully, noticing quiet determination beneath his grief and isolation. She understood now. Ethan's solitude had been his armor, protecting him from further loss. Yet tonight, he willingly risked everything to help her and the children. Marissa felt newfound respect and empathy. A gentle knock sounded at the cabin door, startling them both. Ethan opened it cautiously, relaxing instantly at Grace Miller's kind smile. Grace, perceptive as ever, entered quietly, offering comforting words as she expertly applied bandages to Marissa's forehead. "You're brave, dear," Grace whispered softly, admiration clear. Marissa smiled weakly, warmth blooming within her despite exhaustion. Ethan watched silently, grateful beyond words for Grace's quiet strength and compassion. Across town, Sheriff Carl Dawson sat grimly at his desk, examining evidence Ethan and Marissa had secretly delivered earlier. Carl's deputy, young Ben Carter, stood nearby anxiously. Ben was a fresh-faced officer in his mid-20s, earnest and idealistic, sandy blonde hair cut short beneath his neatly placed hat. Carl trusted Ben implicitly, a rarity these days. "We have enough, Sheriff?" Ben asked softly, hopeful yet cautious. Carl exhaled slowly, nodding gravely. "More than enough. We move tomorrow at dawn." As dawn approached, Ethan and Marissa sat quietly near the cabin fireplace, fatigue evident yet determination unwavering. Toby slept peacefully in the adjacent room, safe for now, unaware of the storm soon breaking over Desert Springs. Dakota rested just outside, silent guardian beneath the fading moonlight. Ethan glanced toward Marissa, voice quiet yet firm. "You know, I lost everything before coming here, my wife, my son." Pain shadowed his expression briefly. "But tonight, for the first time since then, I realized something. I don't want solitude to define me forever. Helping these kids, fighting for justice, it's given me purpose again." Marissa smiled softly, understanding deeply. "I lost someone too. My sister vanished when I was 16. It's why I became a reporter, to give voice to those who can't speak for themselves." Ethan nodded silently, feeling deep kinship and trust forming between them. Dawn broke gently, bathing Desert Springs in soft pastel hues. Ethan stepped outside, Dakota immediately at his side, loyal and steadfast. Marissa joined shortly afterward, satchel of evidence clutched determinately in her hands. Sheriff Dawson's squad cars approached cautiously, Carl emerging resolutely, Ben at his side. "We're ready," Carl affirmed quietly, glancing toward Ethan and Marissa appreciatively. "Thanks to you, Desert Springs is hope again." Ethan nodded solemnly, heart swelling with renewed purpose. Together, united by courage and compassion, they would ensure justice prevailed, ending the nightmare for countless innocent lives. The chase had been terrifying, the night dark and dangerous. Yet beneath moonlight, Ethan discovered something profound. He was no longer alone. Beside Marissa, Grace, Carl, and loyal Dakota, he found strength, friendship, and redemption. They stood silently as sunlight fully illuminated Desert Springs, a new day dawning, promising freedom from darkness at last. As dawn broke vividly over Desert Springs, a fleet of federal vehicles, sleek and imposing, rolled purposefully down the dusty road toward Ethan's cabin. Ethan stood silently beside Marissa, gripping the leather satchel containing crucial evidence, his jaw set with quiet resolve. Dakota watched attentively from beneath the porch, the Mustang's intelligent gaze reflecting awareness of the moment's gravity. Sheriff Carl Dawson stepped forward, greeting Agent Olivia Bennett, a federal investigator newly arrived from Reno. Olivia was a poised woman in her early 40s, medium height with an athletic build, her sleek black hair pulled back in a neat bun. Her deep brown eyes radiated intelligence and unwavering determination, qualities shaped by years pursuing justice amidst adversity. Olivia shook Carl's hand firmly, nodding appreciatively toward Ethan and Marissa. "You've done exceptional work," she praised quietly. "We'll handle things from here." Ethan exchanged a tense glance with Marissa, handing Olivia the evidence. "These files and recordings detail everything. Their network, finances, connections," Ethan explained solemnly. Olivia took the satchel carefully, her expression turning grimly resolute. "We'll bring them down," she promised earnestly. "Justice will prevail." Hours later, Ethan watched from afar as Jonathan Keller and former Sheriff Frank Rollins were escorted firmly into federal custody, their once powerful demeanors now subdued, eyes cast downward in shame. Ethan felt satisfaction mixed with lingering sadness. So many innocent lives disrupted by greed and cruelty. His thoughts shifted warmly toward Toby, asleep in his cabin, finally safe from horrors he had endured. Weeks passed swiftly, punctuated by trials and court testimonies. Marissa's meticulous reporting brought national attention to Desert Springs, shining an unforgiving spotlight on corruption. Ethan stood by her side throughout, admiration and respect growing daily between them. Eventually, justice triumphed. Keller, Rollins, and several influential accomplices received substantial prison sentences, their powerful empires crumbling irrevocably. Ethan returned home after the trials concluded, heart lighter than it had felt in years. Toby ran out to greet him eagerly, healthier now, his pale cheeks finally gaining color. Toby's eyes sparkled, brighter and happier, as Ethan scooped him affectionately into a hug. Dakota whinnied softly nearby, contentedly grazing. Life, Ethan realized gratefully, had truly begun again. Ethan had officially filed adoption papers weeks earlier, and now, with legalities settled, Toby was finally his son. The realization filled Ethan with joy and purpose once thought lost forever. The boy's infectious laughter transformed Ethan's cabin, filling its walls with happiness once more. Late that evening, as stars blanketed the desert sky, Ethan sat quietly on the porch, Dakota resting comfortably beside him. Ethan stroked the Mustang's glossy black mane affectionately, murmuring softly, "You saved us both, you know." Dakota snorted gently in response, amber eyes shimmering peacefully. Ethan smiled warmly. Marissa soon joined them, bringing freshly brewed coffee from inside. Her wound had healed, leaving only a faint scar, symbolizing courage rather than pain. "What's next?" Marissa asked softly, settling beside Ethan comfortably. Ethan glanced thoughtfully toward distant Asylum Ridge, dark silhouette standing starkly against the starry horizon. "That place represents darkness and despair," Ethan murmured determinedly. "It's time to change that." Marissa listened attentively, eyes glowing with agreement. "We can transform it into something meaningful," Ethan continued earnestly. "A safe haven, a sanctuary for children like Toby, victims needing healing and protection." Marissa squeezed Ethan's hand gently, voice warm and encouraging. "Let's do it." Over the following months, Ethan and Marissa tirelessly collaborated with townsfolk, Sheriff Dawson, and Agent Olivia Bennett, securing approvals and funding for their ambitious vision. Volunteers arrived steadily. Local carpenters, electricians, nurses, teachers, all inspired by Ethan and Marissa's unwavering commitment. Among them was Sam Porter, a retired carpenter in his early 70s, weathered features beneath a shock of white hair. Sam moved slowly yet efficiently, his quiet strength and wisdom invaluable during reconstruction efforts. Beside him worked Annie Lewis, a spirited nurse in her mid-30s, tall and graceful, with fiery red curls cascading loosely around a compassionate face. Annie's infectious optimism uplifted everyone around her, particularly the children gradually arriving for care. Together, the community transformed Asylum Ridge dramatically. New bright paint, repaired roofs, cheerful gardens replacing ruins. Its haunting past replaced by warmth, laughter, and love. Ethan often paused amid construction chaos, heart swelling at the miraculous rebirth. Finally, the center opened officially, renamed Desert Springs Children's Sanctuary. Families and reporters gathered excitedly, witnessing remarkable change. Marissa stood proudly beside Ethan, both addressing the joyful crowd. Toby stood shyly beside Ethan, smiling timidly as applause filled the air. Dakota grazed peacefully nearby, seemingly aware of his pivotal role in creating this sanctuary. Sheriff Carl Dawson approached afterward, shaking Ethan's hand firmly. "You've given this town hope," Carl murmured sincerely, emotion thickening his voice. "Etan nodet humbly, gratitude evident." Months turned to years, and Desert Springs flourished beneath newfound peace and unity. Ethan's family grew happier daily, Toby thriving under patient love and guidance, Marissa becoming an inseparable part of their lives. One warm spring afternoon, Ethan and Marissa watched Toby ride Dakota confidently across open desert, laughter ringing joyfully beneath cloudless skies. Ethan smiled contentedly, gently wrapping his arm around Marissa's shoulders. "From ashes we've risen," Ethan whispered reverently. "Together, Marissa rested her head comfortably against him, heart filled profoundly with love and fulfillment. Dakota carried Toby closer, the boys' radiant joy illuminating their faces. Desert Springs, Ethan realized gratefully, was finally home, not just physically but emotionally and spiritually. Loss had initially driven him here, yet courage and compassion transformed grief into purpose. With Marissa and Toby beside him, Ethan found happiness and peace once considered impossible. As evening settled gently over the desert landscape, stars emerging softly overhead, Ethan stood quietly outside the sanctuary, Dakota grazing contentedly nearby. Ethan's heart swelled profoundly, gratitude overflowing. Darkness had been defeated, replaced by powerful hope, renewal, and rebirth. Ethan silently thanked fate, his beloved family, and faithful Dakota, loyal companion whose guidance led them all toward redemption. Rising triumphantly from despair's ashes, Ethan finally knew true peace, forever grateful for second chances, lasting friendships, and endless possibilities ahead. Life often brings us moments of deep despair, much like Ethan experienced after losing everything dear to him. Yet, this story gently reminds us that even from the darkest ashes, we can rise again through courage, compassion, and faith. Perhaps you face your own storms, moments when hope seemed distant. Remember, like Ethan found strength through friendship, family, and determination, you too can discover light beyond your struggles. Share this story to inspire someone who needs encouragement today. Comment amen below to join in prayer for those fighting their own battles. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more uplifting stories. May God bless you and guide you toward brighter days ahead. Amen.